Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today I'm with my buddy Alex Pardo. We're going to be talking about his transition from single family into self-storage, really from a lot of wholesaling into self-storage. And a lot of you guys know that I also have kind of made a transition from single family into doing a lot more multifamily. Maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's a wisdom thing, but you just eventually want to do bigger deals that are a little more passive. But we're going to find out. We're going to crack the code today. So Alex, good to see you, buddy.
Mike, always a pleasure seeing you, my friend. Love what you've done with the show, how you've grown throughout the years. So yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, you too. A lot of people don't, I've said this before, but like I use the podcast as a way to just like hang out with my pals. Like I mean, it is a show that people are watching, but it's like a way for you and I to get back together. We've been friends for a long time and, talked a little bit more here recently, but sometimes there's 6 months or a year periods where we don't catch up very much. And I'm like, it's a great way for us to just catch up and I guess let the world peek over our shoulder a little bit while we're talking, huh?
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, I feel the same way. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, Alex also has a podcast. I remember back when he started it, we were talking a little bit. So we're kind of OGs in the podcasting space. So he's a pro. It's going to be like a professional podcast.
Which, by the way, I need to give you publicly a lot of credit for that because I remember a few conversations we had prior to launching the Flip Empire show back in 2016. And I remember just asking you some questions, man, like, hey, like this and that. And you were a big help, man. So I really owe a lot of my success really to guys like you and others that I like looked up to, asked questions. And you guys, you always had an open heart to be able to share. You never like withheld information. And so really, really appreciate that, man. Those are the conversations I'll just never forget. So thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. And I think one of the things that I told you when we talked back then was like, you have to have a clear plan, like how this is going to impact your business and what the goal is, because there's a lot of carnage out there, people that start podcasts and do, 2, 5, 10 episodes, and then all of a sudden they stop. And I was like, if you want to stick with this forever, you got to be committed. And
right.
I think, you could say this about your business and my business as well and for hopefully a little lesson here for everybody listening here is, I use this phrase all the time, like play the long game, because business is hard. And I'm not saying that it gets easier, but your mindset of being able to stick with something for a long period of time and kind of fight through the times when you're like, why the heck am I doing this? And it's like, well, you're doing it for the good times, but you have to go through some bad times too, or some challenging times or whatever. So glad you stuck with it, buddy.
Yeah, man. And look, what you just said, I want to kind of quickly highlight and underscore, because oftentimes, Mike, you and I have conversations amongst each other with like our peers and students, prospects, and people are always asking, like, they're looking for like the shiny bullet. I feel like people want to know what is the thing that unlocks whatever they're after. And honestly, like oftentimes I don't have a very sexy answer for you, but I know that consistency is a big part of the formula. And to your point, I think when you decide and you commit and you say, hey, I'm going to play the long game. I'm not just in it for the short-term results, but I'm really going to play the long game. And you have that mindset going into whatever it might be. It could be storage, which we're going to talk about. It could be single family wholesaling, building a rental portfolio, or just any business. I think you got to have a mindset that you're in it for the long haul, man. And I think you just set yourself up for success that way.
Absolutely. So Alex, if anybody listening right now doesn't know you, tell us a little bit about your background, and then let's kind of get in from how you transitioned after a long period of time from wholesaling into self-storage. But tell us a little bit about your background.
I'll do my best to just keep the background and my intro, all that pretty short so we can kind of get to the meat of the call. But born and raised here in Miami, I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs, Mike, as you know, but I always had that wiring inside of me to want to go out and create, produce something. I'm big on building genuine, meaningful relationships with people. And so I've always had a desire to really want to help and impact people, which is part of the reason I started the podcast back in 2016. But something happened when I got to college. I started interviewing with big companies and ended up getting a job in General Electric in their financial management program. And, I'm not good at a lot of things, but there's a few things I'm pretty good at. And one of those is I always tell people, when you're not clear what you want, ask yourself what you don't want, and then you can back into what you ultimately want. And that's exactly what I did in my corporate job. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to create something, but I didn't know what that looked like. But I do remember looking at my boss all the way up the ladder and telling myself, I know I definitely don't want that. Yeah. So I finished that 2-year rotational program in General Electric. I went backpacking around Europe. And it was on the train that I just started to immerse myself in the personal development books. And while I was in an internet cafe in Ibiza, a friend of mine invited me to a gentleman by the name of Dave Lindahl, who I'm sure you probably know.
He's doing been on my podcast before. Yeah, it's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, he's the apartment house guy, right, way back in the day, and I think he still does it. But anyway, he was doing a marketing for deals boot camp. This was October of 2005. It was $997. That might as well have been $997,000 to me at the time. But I ended up committing. I paid that money, and then I essentially took out a letter from a manual I got at that boot camp, and I started a pre-foreclosure direct mail campaign, and ended up doing a little bit less than 3 months later, ended up doing my first deal. And so, yeah, man, I've been a full-time real estate investor since late 2005.
That's awesome. And let's talk about the transition. So at some point you, I think, well, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but at some point you made a transition to do less wholesaling and more self-storage. And then at some point you went all in on self-storage. So tell me a little bit about that, where you were at mentally and kind of why you decided to do that.
For sure, man. I think it's a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges and mistakes I made in my journey is, and I'm very open about that, is ironically, Mike, I got into real estate because I wanted time freedom, I wanted cash flow, I wanted obviously financial freedom and all the benefits that we know and love about real estate, but I ended up playing the transactional game. And I felt like I almost got addicted to the revenue and the income you generate wholesaling. So, here I am, I look up 10, 12 years later, and I remember having a conversation with my wife. I said, where's the cash flow? Like, yes, we're generating multiple six figures every single year, and it's great for the family, and it provides for us and all that. But it's like it just started to feel like a grind and a hustle. And maybe people listening or watching us can relate to that feeling of like starting the month from scratch. And I said, I need to switch what I'm doing. So kind of similar to what I did in my corporate job, I said, well, what if I'm still a wholesaler 12, 24 months from now? How would that make me feel? And I almost had that feeling, dude, in my gut, like it was Sunday evening and I was getting ready to go to my corporate job. And I'm like, something's broken here. Like, this is the business that I've built and created, yet I don't want to continue to hustle deals. So I started building a rental portfolio, thinking and buying into the myth that was passive. And you and I know that, owning a bunch of rental properties is not very passive. And so after a couple of years of doing that, I said, okay, well, this isn't the path for me. And I ended up, I was coaching somebody at the time that owned a storage facility. And I got a real inside look into not just their business, but that asset class. I always assumed, Mike, that whenever I kind of evolved and grew out of single family, I was going to kind of go into multifamily. And I love multifamily, amazing asset class. But I had already experienced some burnout from tenants and toilets and being a landlord. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to go into multifamily. Yes, you have the economies of scale, but I don't want to deal with that. And in storage, I quickly learned that, you have customers, you don't have tenants, and I don't have toilets and plumbing. By the way, I was never a good rehabber, which is why I did wholesaling. So in storage, I don't have these crazy renovations. So yeah, man, I think this was right around the time of COVID. I had already decided I was going to wind down the business. And when COVID hit, I was like, you want to know what? To me, this is like a blessing from God. And so I took a team of 8-9 people at that time. We had our overhead was about, 40-45 grand a month. And over the next 3 to 4 months, I kind of wound it down. Took some time off, and then late 2020 is when I committed myself to get into self-storage.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say my story of moving into multifamily is similar in the sense that we had a single family rental portfolio, and for the first, many years we had them, I was like, these things suck. Like, I hate them. And then I started to see like the appreciation. Yeah. We paid off some debt early, and we started to have more cash flow. And I was like, it got to a point to where, and by the way, I've been buying rentals for 15, 16 years or so. And then 10 years into it, I was like, okay, I can see the value of this now. Like, I'm, getting wealthier on paper. Like, we're getting, we're real estate kind of rich and cash poor or whatever. Yeah. But it was like the realization of like, oh, okay, I get it now because we've been doing this long enough to where I can see the value. But it was like, if I want to 10x this, I'm just thinking about how hard it was to 1x it. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go buy these one at a time. Like that would be so hard. And then it was just this realization of like, okay, we got to do some deals that have more zeros behind them because, we can move the needle faster. And I think also was a realization of, once you're in business for a while, probably like me, I had coaching, I had rental income, I had other income streams for kind of what I'll call kind of today money, right? And it's like what I really need is more long-term investments. And it was like, okay, if I go buy these one at a time, I can do it, but it's going to be a grind. And maybe I just need to get a couple multifamily deals that would be the equivalent of me 10xing my single family,
Yeah. And that's exactly right. I think what you just said is spot on, right? Like you get leverage, and I don't mean leverage in terms of the debt type of leverage, but I'm talking about like when you do multifamily or you do other commercial like storage, you get the economies of scale. Like one deal, I would have had to have done numerous single family homes to give me the equivalent of what one good storage facility can give me. And I think the older I got, and as my girls have gotten, a little bit older throughout the years, like I value my time that much more. And I want to be doing things that are meaningful. And I just wanted to get off that hamster wheel that admittedly I had created for myself. And I think a lot of people find themselves stuck and not really sure how to transition. So what I wish I knew then that I know now, because I would have gotten started much sooner, is that a lot of the skill sets that we've acquired throughout the years in the single family space, as you know, many of those skill sets translate over into the commercial world, whether it's multifamily and storage. And so I think oftentimes what holds people back from doing bigger deals, in my opinion, and maybe you have a different take, Mike, is number one, a limiting belief. Sometimes I find that people are a little bit intimidated because it's just a larger property. It maybe has an extra zero or two. And then number two, it's just a knowledge gap. And quite honestly, like I think if you can overcome the first thing, which is just opening your mind to the fact that like oftentimes I think these bigger deals are actually easier to do than the smaller deals, And so I'll kind of pause there, but I hope that if anything, people take from this, just borrow my belief that if you desire to do bigger deals, you absolutely can. You just have to tweak a few things, and then it's a knowledge gap.
Yeah, and I think part of the difference too is I'm guessing you had some similarities to me in the single family space. Even when we were rocking, it was like I was still working really hard, and even though I had a team, I was doing a lot of it. Right, I was doing a lot of the work. Like the buck stopped with me, and I was doing everything. And I had my hand in everything, I'll say. Even if I had a good team, I still had my hand in. I was micromanaging everything. But I think when you start to do commercial deals, you realize that you only have to be good at some aspects of it because you have a team involved, right? It's very much a team sport as compared to single family. And so, like, even on the multifamily side, like I'm not actively managing, I'm not property managing like my partners are. Yeah. I've just played more on the financial side. I'm helping raise money. I'm kind of doing more of the investor relations type stuff. I'm putting my own money in. I'm evaluating the deal up front, but I'm not out looking for deals like somebody else would bring a deal to us, right? And so there's usually it's more of a team effort. I mean, it's the same thing for you on the self-storage side, right?
You're 100% right. I think what you said is so valuable because if people here just got crystal clear, Mike, on what assets and resources they have. And by the way, when I say assets, I'm not only talking about money, but I'm talking about like one of the exercises I take people through is just writing down like literally what are the assets and resources that you have at your disposal. That could be time, that could be money, that could be your network, that could be your knowledge or a particular gift or skill set that you have. Get crystal clear on that and then figure out how you can leverage those assets and resources to get a part of these deals, right? Like Mike, you're a networker. You know how to build relationships. You know how to raise money. You know a lot of people. Like there would be no reason for you to do operations of multifamily unless you just love that. And I don't think you do. I don't. But why not? Yeah, why not double down on what you're really good at? And then that's very valuable to bring to a deal or to bring to a multifamily operator. Yep. And that's one of the things that I share with people now. Storage is no different. So you're listening to this and you're in the single family space. Maybe you're a really good marketer and you know how to generate leads. That's extremely valuable to a self-storage operator like myself, right? Because you might come across opportunities that maybe I haven't come across, and that's worth something, right? You can get equity, you can get cash flow in these deals. Obviously, the more that you can bring to the table, then the bigger piece of the pie you might be able to carve out for yourself. But storage and commercial in general, the pie is big enough, generally speaking, where you can bring something to the table and participate in deals, right? And that's one of the things I didn't know when I was in single family. Like, I thought I had to wear all hats to all parts of the deal, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. And I think one of the myths too, and I don't know how you structure your deals and whether it's multifamily or self-storage or anything commercial, there's a lot of ways you can structure the deal.
Yes.
But I think there's a lot of folks that don't focus on commercial because they need that faster money that wholesaling might provide. But there are ways to make faster money. Like a lot of people, like the reason I'm in commercial is more for the long term. Like I'm willing to forego today money for long term wealth building. But there are ways, and I don't want to put any words in your mouth because I don't know exactly how you structure yours, but there are ways to make money up front on commercial deals as well for those that are staying away from it because they don't think that's possible. That is possible, right?
Mike, I'll give you a perfect example. My very first storage deal, and here's the irony of this story, right, is that here I am, I've been wholesaling for 15 years, and I completely do like a hard pivot from wholesaling into storage. My very first storage deal was a wholesale, right? Here's the cool thing about the way that we structured this particular deal is between myself and two other partners, we ended up splitting a $99,000 assignment fee. So my portion was 1/3 of that, 33 grand, which was cool. I made 33 grand on my first storage deal. But here's the kicker. We kept 15% equity in that storage facility, which we still own today.
Yeah.
So I was able to get cash up front, right? And it was about, instead of it closing in 2, 3, 4 weeks, I think it took about 2.5 months to close. So it took a little bit longer, but I was able to generate money up front. And then I still have equity in that deal today. And I would venture to say that 15% equity is probably worth somewhere between 40 and 70 grand based on how the facility is performing today. So at some point when that operator decides to sell or refinance the property, like I'm going to see some additional cash coming in from a deal that I did, 3-4 years ago at this point.
Right.
I've wholesaled other storage facilities, and there's a few nuances, but it essentially works the same way.
Right.
And so you can absolutely make cash up from commercial. I think one of the things that would be insanely valuable for people is to like define your buy box, right? Get really, really intentional about what you want a storage deal to do for you. And then the way that I kind of approach it is my model is anything that fits outside of that buy box. To me, if it's a deal, it might not be a deal for me, but it's a deal for Mike or for somebody else. Yeah. Those become wholesale opportunities for me.
There you go. Yeah. And I know, there's definitely some commercial people that I know that are like, if you bring me a deal, I'll allow you to, I guess finding the deal on single family might get you 40, 50% of the deal, right? Or on single family, but on commercial, there's a lot of other moving parts.
Correct.
So the deal isn't as weighted as heavily as it might be on the single family side typically. But
that's right.
Every commercial person I've worked with, like if somebody were to bring us a good deal and they don't want a piece of the back end and they just want money up front, it's like, let's talk about it and figure out how to make that work too. If that's all you want is just the today money. Right. For those of us that are playing the long game, that's more for us in the back end if that's how you really want to structure it. We wouldn't probably advise that, but if you would rather get paid more up front and less on the back end, we could find a way to make that work.
Yeah, correct. Look, I'm currently coaching people right now that are in 9-to-5 jobs, and their desire is to get out of that, and they're in storage, and their primary aim now is to find undervalued opportunities, what we call value add in the commercial world, and wholesale those. Because they're in a season right now where they're looking to generate a couple $100,000 so that they can make a decision. Then I have others that have assets and they have portfolios and they're not looking for the today money. They're playing the long game. And so they're not interested in the wholesale opportunities. They're interested in finding the right deals that they can buy for cash flow and then future equity upside, right? Future upside whenever they sell or refi. And so it really, I think, just depends on what are your goals, what season of life are you in. But regardless of what season you're in, there's an opportunity for you to get involved. You just have to know what you're looking for, and that'll help kind of shape the initial path that you take.
Yeah, Alex. So why did you choose of all the commercial things out there, why specifically did you settle on self-storage?
Yeah, so when I started to research it, and we didn't have ChatGPT back then, but like when I was doing my research, one of the things that really jumped out at me is that I kept coming up with facts and figures and stats about, of all the commercial asset classes, self-storage is one of the most recession resistant, right? And self-storage has the lowest default rate. I kept coming up with that, right? And then I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I like that. But really what was the clincher for me was not having to deal with tenants, toilets, trash. And because of technology, Mike, like, brother, when I had, up until 4 months ago, I owned 104,000 net rentable square feet of storage across, I think it was 813 units. I might, and this is being very conservative, spend an hour to an hour and a half a week on that portfolio. And that's because technology has allowed us to run what we call an unmanned model. So I don't have any employees. People rent units online. They get text their gate code. We have a local boots on the ground person that deals with unit cleanouts and things of that nature. And then we have a third-party management center and a call center. So that three-pronged management system really allows for a lot of time freedom, right? I can focus on finding really, really good opportunities, plugging in the right third-party management company, finding the right boots on the ground. And because of technology kind of keeping it all together, it just allows me to not have to spend so much time in the operations of the business. So those are a few reasons, but more than anything, it's just, it's an asset class that I think really lends itself to cash flow because it's such a sticky product, right? So think about the time, energy, and effort it takes to move contents out of a storage unit. Right. So on average, our customers stay with our storage facility like a little bit over 3 years on average. So when they move in, they tend to stay. And keep in mind, like, what does storage cost, right? Anywhere between, let's say, $50 to $350 a month. For a lot of people, that's not going to make or break you, right? So if the rates are bumped by 5-10%, you're not going to be like, oh, well, let me just move my stuff out, go find a competitor, especially if the rates are the same. So it's got a lot of advantages that provide for just consistent cash flow month in and month out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like the idea of, no tenant right issues, right? Like there's a lot of people, a lot of states where it's very hard to evict people, and these are just created, much like commercial leases, right? So if you don't pay, I mean, every state's probably a little bit different, and you know this better than me, but you don't pay, you're out. And instead of somebody, instead of having a 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 make ready, sometimes it's, if anything, you're sweeping it out and filling a dumpster probably.
Mike, you're speaking my language. So like, let me ask you this, with multifamily, you guys, I would imagine, have year-long leases with your tenants. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't have that. We have month-to-month leases. And you might think, oh, well, I don't want month-to-month leases. Well, keep in mind what I just shared about how sticky this product is, and people move in, they tend to stay long term. But here's the other thing, brother. It's when somebody doesn't pay, I don't have to go through a 3 to 6 month eviction process. In storage, there's something called lien laws, which means that, to your point, every state is a little different, but generally speaking, within 60 to 70 days, as long as I've given proper notification, as long as I've dotted certain I's and crossed certain T's, we auction off their stuff if they don't pay, right? We generate a little bit of revenue from that. And then our boots on the ground goes in there, cleans out the unit, takes some pictures, and puts it back online so we can rent. And so that process can take, on average, no more than 70 to 80 days. If somebody doesn't pay, we're making a little bit of money because the most expensive thing in storage is a vacant unit. That's an opportunity cost because we're not generating revenue on that vacant unit. And so I just like the fact that I can also raise rates at any point. Right? I'm not stuck. If I have a year-long lease with a tenant and you're collecting $1,300 a month from that tenant, that's what you're going to collect for the next X amount of months. In storage, we can vary the rates based on what the market is doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I've heard you would be able to be able to tell me this, but that during good times people tend to buy a lot of junk and they can't fit it in their house. During bad times, even if they're starting to downsize, hey, let's get a smaller place to live. Yeah. What are we going to do with all this stuff? Well, let's put it in self-storage. So I've heard that the market actually maybe even does better during
It's
bad
better.
times versus good times. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah, 100%, man. Look, I don't know about you, but like my wife, I have 3, 4, 5 Amazon packages at my door every day, and I'm not right now. We don't rent storage, but we have rented storage. And the thing is, think about Americans, just the way they consume, the way that they don't want to like get rid of things. And to your point, like when the market contracts and things get tight, because people don't want to get rid of things, they downsize into typically smaller like dwelling units. And then they go rent storage for 100, 200, 300 bucks a month. Right. And man, I would venture to say, and this I don't know for a fact, but now I'm speculating, if you were to appraise the contents of the average storage unit, it is probably worth far less than what they pay every single month on the aggregate. Like if you take 36 months, 3 years of 150 bucks a month and you do that math, that's probably a lot more money spent than what the contents are worth, right? And so that kind of tells you people's mindsets about like not wanting to get rid of things.
Yeah. Awesome. So what's your vision for the future? Like, if you have a crystal ball, like I had somebody on the show here recently and we were talking about a crystal ball and we're looking at interest rates and, what's going on with building and stuff like that for the single family space. But in the self-storage space, I don't imagine there's a scenario where people are going to start buying less crap that they need to store. But, what do you see going out, if you were to go out like 5 or 10 years even, like what does this industry look like?
Yeah, I'm very bullish on self-storage, Mike. I think it's a needed product and service that I think is not going away. In fact, I think it's getting bigger. Now, sometimes people ask me, Mike, like, hey, like what do I need to be aware of when it comes to storage? Like, it sounds amazing, but so let me be super transparent. Like, sometimes people, especially if you buy a storage facility in not such a great market, sometimes people will tend to use storage units as their house. And so sometimes people might move in, right? We've dealt with that from time to time. Sometimes the automated gate breaks and you have to go get somebody out there. So those are some of the things that at times can be a little bit of a headache with storage, but they don't happen that often. Now, in terms of the long term, look, storage is very much tied to housing, right? Like I want to be in markets where the population is increasing, where jobs are coming in. No different than multifamily. I'm sure those are some of the things that you look for on the demographic side and choosing markets. Storage is no different. So I want to be where people are moving in. I like to be in secondary and tertiary markets. So as an example, I live in Miami. I've never spent 1 minute looking for self-storage in Miami. I'm looking for markets that have a population 5,000 to 60,000 people, where the population is increasing. I like there to be an average medium household income of at least 50,000 or up, right? Because people now have the ability to pay for storage and continue to pay for storage. But look, as rates have gone up in the last couple of years, has it been a little bit more challenging to get financing for storage? Absolutely. Like now we have to look through more deals just to get these deals to pencil, for the numbers to make sense. By the way, one of the big reasons I love seller financing and just creative deal structuring. Like that's one of my favorite ways to get storage deals done. And it's a lot easier because these storage owners, they're business owners. So oftentimes they understand it. And I actually find it's easier to pitch creative financing, seller financing to a storage owner than it is to a single family homeowner.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
So
more logic and less emotion typically.
That's it. You nailed it, Mike. Like they're not emotionally attached to the asset because it's a business for them.
Yeah.
By the way, you had asked me earlier, like why self-storage? It's that very thing. It's a business with the benefits of real estate. So you kind of get the best of both worlds there. So yeah. But
awesome.
I'm very bullish on storage long term.
Good stuff. Well, Alex, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, brother. Hey, man, I really appreciate the opportunity. If anybody is interested in learning more about storage, actually, Mike, is it cool? Can I share some resources with people?
Sure can, yeah, and we'll have some of these links down below in the show notes as well. But go ahead and tell us where you want people to go learn more about you, Alex.
Send a text, send the word storage, and then put investor fuel in parentheses so that I know that you came from Mike's show. So text the word storage, investor fuel to 305-318-6213. And then we'll send you a Dropbox link with a bunch of resources like nothing for sale, no strings attached, training, my contract, the letter that I've used to wholesale, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of storage. So it'll include all that information 100% for free. So just text the word storage investor fuel to 305-318-6213 and we'll send you over all those resources.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Alex. And yeah, guys, we've got some other resources down below in the show notes. So Alex, thanks again for joining us today, buddy. Always good to see you.
Hey, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
And everybody, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.